But now, because we have gotten to this crisis of security where folks are not protecting data, it's become data breaches are very prevalent, all that good stuff, all the fear mongering. The healthcare industry is one that's been hit the hardest, coupled with the fact that they have the most valuable data on the market. So you're seeing this scramble in the healthcare industry for folks to try to build towards things like high trust, because HIPAA actually, it hasn't updated. There's a HIPAA update coming. They've talked about for a while, but it hasn't been touched in over a decade. And so the standards are not meeting expectations for leveling up the healthcare industry.
Mhm.
Getting all choked up talking about HIPAA. But
A very emotional topic.
yeah, I know. We just are all passionate about that, about HIPAA and healthcare. But at the end of the day, now we're finally starting to see the regulations catch up with the not the technologies, but the security practices that healthcare industries are trying to adopt in order to stop the bleeding.
Yeah, it's there's fewer industries that you could, with relative ease, attack successfully and cause just widespread damage. I'm thinking about, other sectors, right? Like the power grid, for instance, or the banking industry. Those would be like very widespread, touches almost everyone in a region or the country, right? But those are very hard targets. I mean, maybe not the power grid is that, hard of a target. I have to bring on actually some experts in the area to talk about it. But, when you look at hospitals and medical systems, those seem to be like low hanging fruit. And, I'm based out of Chicago, right? So here we have, Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Lurie Children's Hospital. Those are like the two biggest, hospital systems for sure in the region. And I think it was last year sometime, one of those hospitals, they went down. I think it was Lurie's Children's, right? And I'm not talking, out of pocket about anything. There's a news article about it. So they went hard down for several months. Right now, I thought for sure I didn't have a problem, right? Because why would that matter to me? I'm out in the burbs. I take my kids to a different pediatrician, right? Like they're not at Lurie's or anything like that, thankfully. And sure enough, I found out all of the medical systems in, the region that are linked up to Lurie's, because all of them are down as well. Right. And then, I have someone hitting me up on the side saying, "Hey, we're really swamped over here. We could really use your help." And I'm sitting over here saying, like, I applied to you guys 6 months ago. I don't know what you want me to do. I need some money. I need a contract. I need some legal disclosures before we go and dive into this. They were swamped. I have a friend that was working at Northwestern, and physically those two buildings are connected in Chicago. And he was telling me, he's like, it is so bad that we had to literally physically unplug the network connections between us and them just to make sure that nothing happened to our network, because they were hard down. They were down to, pads of paper for managing doctors' schedules and stuff.
That's horrible. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
Yeah.
our CMO was when him and his wife had his baby, they were hit by a cyber attack. The hospital, and so everything was being done by paper. It was taking a lot longer. Like those situations hit close to home. But you have to. We also get all of those notifications on, oh, your data has been ended up in a breach, and a lot of times it's healthcare entities. But you pointed out something very important, Joe, which is that a lot of times people are very reactive, and so in this case, like they didn't pay attention to needing that cybersecurity support until they were caught with their pants down. And then it's a scramble. And then they want everything yesterday. And then there's all this, there's this speed associated with it that then causes more issues because you're missing things. And it's very lumpy in how people invest in security and why they invest in it. They have to have some material need, whether they are being impacted by a breach, or their customer's not going to sign with them because they don't have their SOC 2 attestation, or whatever the case may be. And we need to get security shining in the same light as marketing and finance and these other departments at any company that's collecting sensitive data.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I feel like security is always viewed as, like a black hole that CEOs and boards just send money to and it disappears, When in all actuality, yeah, it disappears. We don't really make the business any money, but surely we protect the business from extreme losses. Like even that hospital breach that I just discussed, right? If they just had simple backups, right, and they tested the backups maybe once a year, that problem would be resolved, you know, in an afternoon, in a weekend, right, with a competent engineer on the other side of it. But lo and behold, they thought they had backups and they didn't have any backups. And so then they were in a situation where they had to rebuild everything from scratch, right? And that's where security really shines, right? It's like, hey, you want the rest of the business operating at a high level? Well, security enables that. You know, like it allows you to be able to do that. It protects your ability to do that, you know, and we gotta find a way to shift that narrative.
Yeah, the everybody views security as a cost center, as a sunk cost, and it's just not true. You can either look at it from that perspective of it's not a sunk cost anymore for that hospital that lost millions and millions of dollars. And then also there's this new trend where you can actually leverage security in your sales cycle and be able to talk about it in your sales cycle to showcase, hey, look, I care about your data, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, and these are the things we're doing to protect it. So there ends up being an ROI on security. And I want to see more of that. But unfortunately, regulation's not driving that. It's more enterprises. It's enterprises that are demanding more security standards across the board, which then in turn requires these companies to invest in it. And so we do need that to be more prevalent in the industry for what you just said to catch on for folks to look at this in a more positive and necessary light.
How do you think we make that change? You know, because I always look at like GDPR, right? And I actually love everything about it for the most part
Mm-hmm.
of what they did, where they said, hey, here's the standard. How you enact it is kind of up to you, but this is what we're requiring you, you know, to be able to do the functionality and all that to have with someone's data. I feel like here in America, we need something like that, where it's like, hey, you know, all these states, you can do whatever you want to do, but here's the bare minimum. You know, you need to, you know, encrypt personal data. You know, you need to store it this way. You need to have relevant backups, all that sort of stuff, right? I feel like that's almost the only way that it'll work because each state is just going to be, you know, completely different.